She married a prince, lived in a palace, and became the fairy-tale Duchess Britain adored. But behind the diamonds and tiaras, even her own family whispered doubts.
I think that Susan, Sarah's mother, didn't feel that the marriage would change things for her. But it's a curious thing, she was very wary.
Did Sarah Ferguson truly fall in love with Prince Andrew, or did she fall in love with the crown? From the moment she stepped into the royal spotlight, everything about her, her laughter, her charm, her confidence, made headlines. But what few realized then was that the very qualities that made her shine would soon become the reasons she was cast out. Tonight, we're peeling back the polished royal image to uncover the story few dare to tell, the hidden doubts, the unspoken fears, and the truth behind one of the most complicated royal relationships in modern history. And if you enjoy stories that reveal the real people behind royal perfection, consider joining our community. A simple tap on subscribe helps you never miss the stories that others only whisper about. Long before the royal wedding bells rang through Westminster Abbey, the whispers had already begun. Inside the Ferguson family, there was excitement, pride, and quiet unease. Sarah Margaret Ferguson was not born into the world of palaces and tiaras. Her family sat comfortably within Britain's upper middle class, respectable, connected, but never truly royal. Her father, Major Ronald Ferguson, had spent years managing polo matches for Prince Philip and later Prince Charles, a position that kept the Fergusons within royal circles, but always on the edge of true power. Her mother, Susan, on the other hand, watched the unfolding romance from a distance, literally. Having remarried and moved to Argentina, she was far removed from the glitz and scrutiny that surrounded her daughter's growing fame. Those close to her said she didn't believe marriage to a prince would change who Sarah was at her core, but she worried about how the crown would change the world around her. When news broke that Sarah was dating Prince Andrew, family acquaintances couldn't help but wonder what truly drew her in. Some described her as a girl who always knew which circles to move in. Others claimed her father was torn, proud that her daughter had captured a prince, yet uneasy about the relentless spotlight it would bring. Behind closed doors, quiet conversations painted a more complex picture. Was Sarah a young woman swept up in love, or someone who saw an opportunity to rise above her station? Her energy, charm, and humor were undeniable, but so was her ambition. And as the engagement drew nearer, even those who adored her began to question whether she understood the life she was stepping into. Because marrying a prince was one thing, living as a royal was another entirely. But if her own family had doubts, the palace had fears of its own, and those fears would soon prove prophetic.
Commentator's delightful phrase, it's wild, it's woolly, it's western, and good watching. Like my wife. Sorry.
From the moment Sarah Ferguson entered the royal sphere, she was both adored and doubted. To the public, she was everything the monarchy seemed to need, a burst of warmth and humour in an institution often seen as cold and restrained. But inside Buckingham Palace, behind those polished corridors and centuries-old traditions, not everyone was cheering. To courtiers and senior aides, Sarah was a mystery wrapped in mischief. She laughed too loudly, spoke too freely, and carried herself with an ease that unsettled those who guarded the royal image. One palace insider once admitted she was great fun, but not the safest choice for a royal bride. That comment, whispered before her wedding, would later echo like a warning. At first, her charm seemed to work wonders. The Queen was reportedly fond of her quick wit and down-to-earth spirit. Prince Philip enjoyed her energy and irreverence. Sarah could light up a room in seconds, and she did. But her vibrancy also brought unpredictability. In a world ruled by protocol and silence, she represented color, noise, and spontaneity. Behind closed doors, royal advisors worried. They feared her enthusiasm could turn to recklessness. Her social life, bright, busy, and filled with well-connected friends, didn't fit the careful mold expected of a duchess. To some, she was a breath of fresh air. To others, a gust of trouble waiting to happen. And yet, for all the caution and quiet disapproval, no one could deny that Sarah Ferguson had captured both the public's heart and Prince Andrew's affection. The royal family hoped, perhaps naively, that love would tame her wild spirit, that marriage would transform her into the polished duchess they imagined. But even then, the signs were there. The same spark that made her irresistible was the same one that could burn everything down. And soon that spark would ignite a royal fairy tale and reveal the cracks already forming beneath the crown. On a bright July morning in 1986, millions watched as Sarah Ferguson walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey, radiant in ivory, satin, and diamonds that glittered beneath the chandeliers. The nation fell in love with her all over again. She wasn't just marrying a prince, she was marrying into a fantasy. The crowd cheered, the cameras flashed, and for a brief moment the royal family seemed reborn in warmth and laughter. But behind that fairy-tale glow, the cracks began to appear. Prince Andrew's naval duties took him away for months at a time, leaving Sarah alone in palaces that suddenly felt too quiet. In later interviews, she revealed that during the first 5 years of their marriage, they spent barely 40 days together each year. For a newlywed duchess, it was a lonely existence masked by public smiles. Loneliness soon met pressure. The tabloids that had once adored her began to circle like hawks. They mocked her laughter, criticized her spending, and whispered that she was too common for the crown. The same personality that had made her a national darling was now labeled as undignified. Every misstep became a headline, every smile analyzed for scandal, and while the world still saw a smiling duchess waving from balconies, behind the palace doors, a different story was already unfolding, one that would soon explode into full public scandal. Because what happened next didn't just shake the monarchy, it would change Sarah Ferguson's life forever.
And it looks as if it might be that they're trying a job of social execution on the Duchess.
The fairy tale began to fracture in the most public way imaginable. What had once been adoration turned into obsession and then into ridicule. The tabloids that had crowned her Fergie the Fun Duchess now sharpened their knives. Every headline dripped with judgment. Every photograph became proof that the palace's fears had been right all along. By the early 1990s, Sarah's once charmed image had collapsed under the weight of rumors, resentment, and relentless press coverage. And then came the moment that sealed her fate. In 1992, while still legally married to Prince Andrew, Sarah was photographed on holiday in the south of France, in the company of her American financial advisor, John Bryan. The pictures were explosive. One showed him kissing her toes, another captured their closeness in ways the royal family could never publicly forgive. Within hours, the images dominated every front page in Britain. The palace was humiliated. The Queen was furious. Prince Philip, according to insiders, refused to even speak her name. Within days, Sarah Ferguson, once the darling Duchess, became the royal exile. The palace that had once celebrated her charm now closed its doors. To many, this was the ultimate confirmation of every rumor that had lingered since her wedding, that Sarah had been reckless, impulsive, and addicted to attention. But the scandals didn't stop there. After her separation from Andrew, her financial troubles became public fodder. She had debts, lavish spending habits, and business ventures that frequently collapsed under scrutiny. In 2010, a hidden camera sting caught her on tape, offering access to Prince Andrew in exchange for £500,000. The video spread like wildfire. Her voice, emotional and trembling, filled the airwaves. She later admitted it was a terrible lapse in judgment, one she'd regret for years. And then came the darkest shadow of all, the Epstein connection. In 2010, it was revealed that Sarah had accepted financial assistance from Jeffrey Epstein to help pay off debts. She called it a gigantic mistake, but by then, the damage was done. Her name was once again tied to scandal, the kind that doesn't fade quietly. To many in the public, she became a symbol of royal disgrace, a woman who had it all and somehow lost everything. But to those who knew her, there was another side. They saw a woman who had been crushed under the weight of expectation and loneliness, someone too human for a world that demanded perfection. Still, the headlines wouldn't let her go. Every time she tried to rebuild, the past resurfaced. And yet, against every prediction, Sarah never disappeared. Because while the monarchy moved on, her story was far from over. After the headlines faded and the palace gates closed, Sarah Ferguson was left to rebuild her life from the ashes of scandal. Many thought she'd vanish quietly, another fallen royal lost to time. But that wasn't Sarah's style. She had stumbled in public, yes, but she wasn't done telling her story. In the years that followed, Sarah began piecing her world back together. She turned to writing, becoming a successful author of children's books and memoirs. She poured her energy into charity work, traveling across continents to support children's welfare, education, and health initiatives. Slowly, her image began to shift, from tabloid punchline to a woman who refused to be defined by her worst mistakes. And then there was Prince Andrew. Despite their 1996 divorce, the two never fully parted ways. They continued to share a home at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, raising their daughters together and appearing side by side at family events. Their bond puzzled the public and fascinated the press. How could a couple once torn apart by scandal remain so close? Sarah herself offered a simple answer: love never really left. In interviews, she often referred to Andrew as her best friend and hinted that their connection was stronger than most could understand. "We're happy with the way we are," she said in one interview. "We support each other completely." To some, this enduring friendship looked like quiet redemption, a story of two people who had faced the worst of public life and somehow emerged intact. To others, it seemed like proof that their marriage, for all its flaws, was rooted in something real. Over time, even the royal family softened toward her. The Queen, who had once been forced to distance herself, began inviting Sarah to family gatherings again. She was there at royal weddings, birthdays, and, most tellingly, at Balmoral, the royal family's most private retreat. The gesture spoke louder than any headline. Forgiveness had quietly found its way back into the fold. Meanwhile, the public too began to see her differently. Gone was the caricature of the scandalous Duchess. In her place stood a woman who had faced humiliation, loss, and criticism, and survived it all with humor, honesty, and surprising grace. Her laughter, once mocked as too loud for royal walls, now sounded like resilience. Still, the question lingered like a ghost. Did Sarah Ferguson marry for love or ambition? Was she misunderstood or simply reckless? Whatever the truth, her journey from Duchess to exile to comeback figure remains one of the most extraordinary transformations in modern royal history. And as the years passed, the same woman once cast out of the royal circle slowly stepped back into it, not as a duchess defined by scandal, but as a survivor defined by strength.
In the end, Sarah Ferguson's story isn't just about a royal marriage, it's about the cost of wanting more. She stepped into a world built on perfection and paid the price for being imperfect. Was it love that led her down that aisle, or ambition? Maybe it was both, because in the royal world, love and ambition are rarely separate. They feed each other, clash with each other, and sometimes destroy each other. What makes Sarah's story so captivating isn't her fall, it's that she never stopped getting back up. Decades after being cast out, she's still standing, still smiling, still herself. The Duchess who laughed too loudly became the woman who refused to disappear. Maybe that's why, nearly 40 years later, her name still draws curiosity. She was flawed, unpredictable, and deeply human. And in a world of polished crowns and perfect portraits, that might be her greatest legacy. If you've enjoyed uncovering the untold truths behind royal lives like this one, join us. Tap subscribe and stay with us as we explore the hidden stories, the forgotten scandals, and the moments that changed history forever.